At my brother's engagement party, he raised his glass and said, "To family, and to those who finally learn how to be quiet and useful." Everyone laughed. I just smiled, lifted my glass, and said, "To quiet usefulness, and to the $8,000 venue deposit I just canceled." The music cut mid-song. His fiancée choked on her drink. My aunt whispered, "Wait. What did they say?" I took a sip and replied, "I was tired of being taken seriously. Not in the way people usually mean it. I don't mean respect, admiration, or trust. I mean the kind of serious that only shows up when you have money. When people lean in just enough to be polite, and behind every compliment is a price tag. That's what my family had turned it into, this never-ending game of pretending they respected me, just so they could keep pulling favors. And for a while, I let it happen. I mean, I make good money. I'm a software engineer, been at a stable company for a while now. No kids, no major debts. It was easy to say yes. A couple hundred here, 1,000 there. New fridge for my parents. Dental work for my brother. Vacation, emergency fund, for my mom. It all added up, but no one ever asked how I was doing. They only asked how I could help them. Brian's engagement party was supposed to be the final. Yes. $8,000 for the vineyard. Another few thousand for other expenses. I'd already transferred money to my parents' account twice that month alone. And not once did anyone say thank you. Not sincerely, at least. It was always wrapped in some passive-aggressive guilt trip about how lucky I was to be doing well. I showed up at the venue already done. Not angry. Just done. I knew they'd parade me around, drop my job title to the bride's family, make it seem like Brian's success was somehow tied to mine. I was used to it. What I wasn't used to was the toast. Brian stood up like he'd just won an award. Raised his glass. Waited for everyone to hush. Then he said, "To family, and to those who finally learn how to be quiet and useful." The laughter that followed felt like someone pushed a glass of water off a table and just watched it shatter. I caught my mom smirking. My dad nodded like it was clever. Rachel leaned into Brian's arm like it was the most charming thing he'd ever said. And that's when I realized I wasn't just tired, I was done. So I stood. Held my glass up. Smiled. "To quiet usefulness, and to the $8,000 venue deposit I just canceled." The music cut off mid-song. Rachel started coughing. My Aunt Carla whispered to someone, "Wait, what did he say?" I took a sip, set the glass down, and looked straight at Brian. "No party. No photographer. No catering. I canceled it all this morning. Thought I'd wait until your big toast to let you know." The silence didn't last long. My mom immediately stood up, asking what I thought I was doing. My dad started accusing me of sabotaging my brother's life. Rachel's parents looked like they'd stepped into the wrong party. And then, from the back of the room, Uncle Rick's voice cut through the noise. "He warned you. I told you all Jack wasn't your damn piggy bank." Everyone turned. No one said anything. Rick was the only one in that room who never asked me for a thing. His wife, my mom's sister, was glaring at him like he'd lost his mind, but he didn't flinch. He just walked over and said, "You ready to leave?" I was. And we did. I left them with their stunned faces, their unpaid vendors, and their entitled expectations. That was the last time I paid to be respected. The calls started early the next morning. I woke up to a phone buzzing nonstop, 11 missed calls from my mom, 4 from my dad, 2 from my brother, and a string of messages that read like some warped combination of a guilt trip and a boardroom memo. Not one started with, "I'm sorry." My mom's first message was 3 full paragraphs. It started with, "We need to talk about what happened last night," and ended with, "You can't just walk away from family when things don't go your way." Somewhere in the middle, she managed to include a line about how everyone counts on you, and how I have a responsibility to set an example. I guess that's what I'd become to her, an example. A tool. A means to keep the machine running. Brian's text came a little later. It was short. No punctuation, just, "Really, Jack, you couldn't just talk to me first?" I read it 3 times before deleting it. The guy makes a toast at my expense and then acts confused when I don't roll with it. Rachel's father sent me a literal email. Subject line, "Your behavior at the engagement party." I didn't even open it right away. When I finally did, it was exactly what I expected, professional outrage wrapped in polite threats. He talked about how disappointed he was, how Rachel was mortified, and how he expected me to reimburse them for the photographer they'd flown in from Seattle. He ended it with a passive-aggressive reminder that actions have consequences. He wasn't wrong. He just didn't realize that I had finally decided to start handing those consequences back. The only person I responded to was Uncle Rick. He called that evening. Same tone as always, calm, steady, like he was just checking in on a friend after a rough week. He didn't ask me to explain anything. He just said he was proud of me. Said he'd gotten into it with Aunt Diane because she thought he was enabling me, but he told her, "No, I'm finally watching Jack do what none of us had the guts to, stop pretending this family's demands are normal." I don't know why, but hearing that felt like someone finally let me breathe. We talked for maybe 15 minutes. He didn't offer advice. Didn't ask me to make peace. He just said he had my back, and that was it. The fallout didn't stop though. A few days later, the wedding planner called. Apparently no one had told her the party was cancelled. Brian and Rachel were still pretending it was all a misunderstanding. She asked if I still wanted her on board. I told her no, and that she'd be getting a final payment for the few hours she already worked. That was it. Then came the real tipping point. My dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. I don't even know how he got in, probably waited until someone left the building and slipped through the door. I almost didn't open it, but I knew if I didn't, he'd just keep showing up. He didn't yell. He didn't sit down. Just stood there in the entryway, looking at me like I'd grown horns. "You owe your brother this," he said. I asked why. He blinked like I'd spoken a different language. Like he hadn't prepared for that part. Then he said it, just one sentence, but it was enough. "Because you're the one who can." That's when it hit me. They never thought I was being generous. They just assumed it was my job to pay for their lives. Because I could. And because they couldn't. That was all it took for them to justify draining me dry. I told him I was done. Done paying to be invited. Done covering for people who saw my help as a guarantee, not a gift. And before he could say anything else, I closed the door and locked it. That night, I dug out the documents for the car I bought my parents. A black SUV I'd paid in full 3 years ago when my dad's old one died. It was registered in my name. I never transferred the title because I didn't think it mattered. But now it did. If I was done being their fallback plan, I had to start reclaiming the things they treated like entitlements. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. But I was finally ready to find out how ugly it would get when the money stopped coming, and the respect had to stand on its own. I gave them 4 days. 4 days without responding, without showing up, without giving them the satisfaction of thinking I was having second thoughts. And on the 5th day, I got the text from Brian that told me exactly what I needed to know. "Fine. You've made your point. Can we move on now?" No apology. No responsibility. Just a request to return to the status quo, like none of it had happened. That same afternoon, I called my insurance company and told them to take the black SUV off my parents' policy and reassign it under mine again. When they asked if I wanted to keep the same address, I gave them a different one, a storage facility not far from me where I'd already arranged a covered space. By the next morning, I was at my parents' house with a spare key and a tow truck. My mom answered the door in her robe. My dad wasn't home, probably at the golf course or pretending to look for work again. I told her straight, I was taking the car. She said that was ridiculous, that I couldn't just take something I had gifted to them. I reminded her that it was still in my name, that I was still paying for the insurance, and that I was done giving things to people who thought they were entitled to them. She called me cruel. Told me it was unnecessary. That I was embarrassing the family. I didn't say much. Just signed the release form and watched the tow truck pull out of their driveway with the SUV behind it. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel angry. I just felt clean. Like something heavy had finally been peeled off my back. That night, the group text started blowing up. First my aunt, Diane, sent one calling me vindictive. Then my cousin jumped in, saying I was breaking the family apart over a stupid joke. Brian finally chimed in and told everyone to let it go, but followed that with, "I'm still out of venue and a photographer, so thanks a lot, Jack." My dad never texted, but I heard through Rick that he was furious. Said I humiliated him? That I was out of control. The only message that didn't make me roll my eyes came from Rachel, surprisingly. It was short. "We didn't realize how much you were doing until you stopped. That's on us." It didn't fix anything, but it was the first honest thing anyone besides Rick had said since the whole thing blew up. Rick called me again later that week. Said I'd started something that couldn't be undone. He wasn't mad about it. In fact, he sounded almost relieved. Like someone had finally shattered the fake smiles and guilt-laced favors that had kept the family floating. He said Diane was furious with him, too. That she accused him of choosing sides. But he told her, "No, I'm choosing reality." I asked him how long he thought the storm would last. He laughed. Said, "Until they find someone else to milk. Or until they realize the money's not the real problem, it's the entitlement." By the end of the week, Rachel's dad emailed me again, this time with numbers. He wanted partial compensation for the party being cancelled. He even included a little spreadsheet with projected costs and losses. I forwarded it to Rick. Rick replied with 4 words. "Tell him to sue." I didn't answer the email. I didn't owe him anything. And I wasn't going to pretend I did. For once, I wasn't reacting, I was choosing. Choosing what I let into my life. Choosing what I supported. And for the first time, that didn't include them. The next surprise came on a Wednesday afternoon. I just wrapped up a long client call and stepped away from my desk to grab lunch when I saw a thick envelope jammed into my mailbox. No return address, just my name handwritten across the front. Inside was a personal check. Made out to me. For $8,000. There was a note, too. No greeting, no signature. Just 6 words scribbled on a torn piece of notebook paper. "Be the bigger man. Fix this." I stared at it for a solid minute, almost waiting for it to make more sense. The handwriting looked familiar, stiff, all caps, like someone who rarely wrote by hand. It was Rachel's dad. Had to be. I didn't deposit the check. I didn't even rip it up. I just left it on my kitchen counter and stared at it for hours, like it might explain itself. At first I thought it was hush money, a quiet bribe to smooth things over and convince me to be the bigger man, like they said. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like bait. They wanted me to cash it. Not to fix anything, but to own the whole mess. If I took the money, it meant I'd accepted blame. That I'd caused the damage. That everything they said about me being vindictive, or petty, was true. So the next morning, I mailed it back. No note. No explanation. That weekend, the family met without me. I know because Rick called me afterward and said it was the most passive-aggressive disaster he'd seen in years. My parents were still furious. Brian had started talking about eloping just to move past the drama. And Rachel was apparently in tears the entire time, saying she didn't even know if she wanted to go through with a wedding surrounded by people who couldn't have a conversation without it turning into a financial negotiation. And then came the real twist. That Monday, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me to. It was Rachel. She was crying, not in the manipulative, staged kind of way, but the quiet kind. Said she needed to talk to someone who wasn't trying to control the outcome. Someone who hadn't been lying to her about how much they owed to family image. She told me she'd found out Brian had opened a joint account with her name on it, one she didn't authorize. He'd used it to shuffle money around for wedding expenses, including taking out a short-term loan. Apparently, the $8,000 I canceled had been part of a House of Cards budget he never told anyone about. If she hadn't caught it early, she would have been tied to all of it legally. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just listened. She asked me if I thought Brian even cared about her, or if he was just trying to stage the perfect show for our family. I said I honestly didn't know. But I told her she deserved someone who didn't view love as a line item on a spreadsheet. She thanked me, then hung up. I don't know what she's going to do. I don't know if the wedding's officially off or just wobbling. But that was the moment I realized it wasn't just me they'd been using. Brian had turned the whole relationship into another performance for the family, and Rachel was just another prop. It was the first time I felt sorry for her. And it confirmed something else, too. I didn't want any part of that world anymore. Not even a seat in the back row. By then, I'd blocked most of my family on everything: calls, texts, social media, even email. I thought maybe they'd take the hint. But entitlement doesn't go down quietly. It finds new doors when old ones close. My work phone started ringing. At first, I thought it was a client. But when I answered, it was my mom. I hadn't even given her the number, which meant she'd called my office and convinced someone to hand it over. She launched right in, no greeting, just accusations. "You're tearing this family apart." I didn't respond. Just waited. "I don't care what Brian did. You could have handled this like an adult. You could have come to us. But instead, you've dragged our name through the mud, and now Rachel's parents are threatening legal action." I said one thing. "You gave them my work number. That's harassment." She went quiet for a moment, then said something about desperate times. I hung up, blocked the number, then reported the whole thing to my HR department, just to cover my bases. That night, Rick came by my place. He had a six-pack and a tired look on his face. Said Diane was still icing him out, called him a traitor, accused him of encouraging my ego. He didn't argue with her. Just packed a bag and left. He was staying at a motel downtown. I told her, if she really thinks I'm the problem, then she's welcome to solve everything without me. He said it without bitterness, like someone who'd already made peace with the fallout. We drank in silence for a while, then he told me something unexpected. Apparently, my dad had started contacting a lawyer to see if he could force me to repay damages for the cancelled event. It wasn't going anywhere. The lawyer basically laughed him out of the office once he realized nothing was in writing. But still, it showed just how far they were willing to go. They'd rather try to sue me than admit I owed them nothing. I thought about everything I'd done for them over the years, paying for my parents' new appliances, covering Brian's credit card debt twice, helping my cousin with her tuition when she suddenly lost her scholarship, which I later found out was a lie. None of it mattered now. They wanted control, not help. So the next morning, I made it final. I wrote a letter to each of them. Nothing dramatic, just a clear, written statement that I would no longer be providing financial support of any kind. Not for events, emergencies, or future plans. I said I'd already done more than I needed to, and that they should stop contacting me. I mailed them. Certified. No ambiguity. Then I booked a flight. Somewhere far. No return date. No itinerary. I didn't even tell Rick where I was going. Just gave him a spare key, asked him to check my mail once in a while, and said I needed to disappear for a bit. He didn't argue. He just nodded, handed me a folded note and said, "Read it when you land." I left the next day. They had drained everything from me, time, patience, energy, and they still thought I owed them more. But this time, they were going to have to navigate their mess without me. I was done negotiating with people who thought love came with an invoice. I didn't even pack much. One carry-on, a half-planned itinerary, and a flight out of LAX to somewhere humid and quiet. I'd picked a spot in the South Pacific, a place none of them could pronounce, let alone track me to. I wanted no part of the noise. No calls, no texts, no group chats begging me to come back for the next family milestone. I turned my phone off before I boarded. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel anxious doing it. On the plane, I opened Rick's note. It was one sentence. "There's freedom in letting people hate you, if it means you finally like yourself." I folded it up and kept it in my wallet. The first week was strange. Waking up without notifications. No deadlines. No passive-aggressive messages from family trying to reframe my silence as selfishness. Just sun, salt water, and a rented scooter that took me down coastlines I couldn't name. By the second week, I realized I hadn't thought about any of them in days. Not Brian, not my parents, not Diane or her endless judgment. I hadn't wondered what they were plotting or who they were blaming now. I didn't care. Except for Rick. I called him from a beachside cafe with patchy Wi-Fi. Told him where I was, vaguely, and that I wasn't coming back anytime soon. "You don't owe me a return ticket," he said. "You owe yourself the time they stole." I asked how things were back home. He said Rachel officially called off the engagement. Left Brian. Apparently, after she found out about the account he opened, she started digging deeper. Turned out, he'd used part of my original venue deposit to float personal purchases, new watch, some crypto bets, even tried to buy himself a gaming rig. She confronted him, and he doubled down. Blamed her. Said it was all Jack's fault for bailing. She packed up the next day. Rick said Brian's been spiraling ever since. My parents tried to pull her family back into the fold, but they're done too. Apparently, Rachel's dad never cashed the check he offered me, and now he's threatening to send it to Brian with a legal notice attached. I think they're finally running out of people to point fingers at, Rick said. I asked if he was okay. He said yeah. Diane still wasn't speaking to him, but he was staying with an old friend. He didn't sound bitter. Just calm. I'm proud of you, Jack, he said. Most people stay plugged in out of guilt. You walked away. I didn't say anything back. I just sat there watching waves roll in, wondering why it took me so long to do something that now felt this natural. I've been here a month now. Maybe I'll stay longer. Maybe I'll find another island. All I know is I haven't looked back. I don't miss them. I don't check their profiles. I don't need to know what lies they're spinning this week. The only person I still talk to is Rick. And that's enough. I used to think cutting off your family was the last resort. Now I know, sometimes, it's the beginning. The update. I came back after a little over 2 months. Not because anything had changed, not because I missed anyone or wanted to fix things. I just woke up one morning in a little bungalow by the water, looked out at the ocean, and thought, I'm ready to go home. Not for them. For me. The flight back was quiet. No one was waiting at the airport, no texts lighting up my screen, no emails asking where I'd been. Honestly, that part felt good. It confirmed everything I already knew. They'd moved on to blaming me in new ways, but they hadn't changed a bit. The silence wasn't peace. It was just more control tactics, dressed up as disappointment. I didn't tell anyone I was back right away. Not even Rick. I spent the first few days walking around the city like a stranger. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. My apartment was still standing, still clean, still mine. But something about it felt emptier in a good way. Like I'd cleared out more than just physical clutter. I didn't check my emails. I turned off most notifications. I sat at cafes and watched people complain about things that didn't matter. I laughed when I wanted to. I stopped feeling like I had to plan the next 10 steps. That was new. Rick only found out I was back because my phone auto-connected to the smart lock at my front door, the one he helped me install. I forgot it would alert him. He showed up that evening with takeout. Didn't say much. Just handed me the bag, kicked off his shoes, and sat down like we'd seen each other yesterday. We ate in silence at first, then he said Diane finally filed for separation. Not divorced yet, but she was out of the house. Took a chunk of furniture with her. Told him he'd changed, like that was a bad thing. Rick said maybe he had. I stopped apologizing for watching people use each other, he said. Apparently, that's a deal breaker. He also told me Brian had moved back in with my parents, jobless, broke, and somehow still playing the victim. Rachel's gone. Officially called off the engagement. She left town, moved to Portland, and is apparently doing okay. She sent Rick a message thanking him for not lying to her. He didn't tell her where I'd been. Just that I was doing alright. That meant more than he probably realized. The rest of the family? Still silent. No apology, no messages, no last-ditch attempts at reconciliation. Just the cold distance of people who resent not getting their way. I don't miss them. And I'm not curious. I've finally stopped wondering what they're saying about me. Doesn't matter anymore. I started therapy after Rick left that night. Nothing heavy, just once a week. Told the therapist I didn't want to reconnect with my family. I just wanted to stop feeling guilty for walking away. She said guilt's just a scar from when we used to let people cut too deep. That stuck with me. Work's different now. I stepped back from full-time and picked up freelance contracts. Only things I enjoy. I'm earning less, but I sleep better. I cook now, just for myself. I even eat at the table instead of in front of a screen. I don't answer calls I don't want to take. I don't reply to guilt texts. And I haven't paid a single cent toward anyone's mess but my own. I used to think family drama was normal. That every person has to carry it, suffer through it, and find ways to smile through the mess. But the truth is, we get to choose what we carry. And for the first time, I'm not carrying them. I didn't come back to return to who I was. I came back to stay exactly who I became when I left.